it's me, Sean Capri. I'm glad you're here because you're listening to the most horse-powerful podcast on the internet. It's the Xbox Drive. I'm on a Skype call with my friend Ryan Turford. He's the man on the moose, and on our journey today, something gigantic happened in the gaming industry. Where were you when it happened? Let's jump on into the Xbox Drive. Boom!
Greater than X.
Hello, Sean Capri.
Hello, Ryan Turford. I don't know if it's even possible for us to even just pretend even for a moment that something gigantic didn't happen this week. I'm still like kind of in disbelief about this Activision buyout and all the things, but how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I mean, other than the fact that Ontario is currently buried under, like 6 or 7 feet of snow right now, it's great. I'm doing great.
Listen, my garbage can is frozen to the street right now because the ice melted and then it froze again, and it's basically Han Solo'd into my road in front of my house. So it's a little bit of a mess, but we've got great things I've got a comfy little hoodie people can check out on the YouTube channel, of course, but I'm all cozy, man. What's up?
I was gonna say that we could have worn matching hoodies today, Sean. You should have told me. We could have matched it up. We could have been in uniform today, but I'm just wearing a normal Xbox shirt today instead. But anyways,
I like it.
Enough about that. We got to get into the show. So of course, let's clean the garage. Folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. We're on all the things. So check us out where podcasts are sold on the internet. Also, leave us a review or rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It definitely helps the show out a lot as well. Also, if you want to see our beautiful faces every single week, youtube.com/UmeCapri is how you do that. We have a drive-by shout-out that we're going to do in just a second from the YouTube comments. And then last but not least, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, head over to Patreon. Patreon.com/UmeCapri is how you do that. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar and out comes content. So as I mentioned, we have a drive-by shout out this week, and that's kind of our tribute to our YouTube comments, of course, over on YouTube. So this comes to us from Erik Cave, who's actually, one of our most consistent commenters on YouTube.
Big time. Yeah, if we could send him like a gold badge or something, that would be kind of nice. Cause he really he's given us all the sweet engagement juice over there. And that's where he leaves his questions. I love it, man.
What a nice young man that Erik Cave is.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually asked a question that is also, I wanted to put in here too, because it's very different from today's topic. And that is, what is your advice for staying connected through gaming with someone who is far away? Do you schedule gaming times, only play certain games with certain people, or have any other tips? So, Sean, you and I both kind of are in, even before the pandemic started, I think both of us didn't really play a lot of games with people in the same room, unless, of course, it was, you and Chelsea or, you and the kids. That's pretty much it. Like, how often did you really have Marcus O'Neill or someone else? All my
friends have left me.
So what do you think about this question?
I love this question. And I think one of the things that Erik kind of touched on is key is decide what game it is. And that's everything. Mm-hmm. Because I just find that some people are very specific about the types of games that they want to play. And if it's like a one-on-one type of thing, or like one with one, or if you're playing with an entire community, like we have Halos as Saturdays, and everybody knows that that's what it is. And I think that's helped people just know, if I'm going to set some time aside for some community night gaming, it's the consistency that actually I think is key.
Yeah.
And then another, I will always remember this. It was about this time last year, in February of last year, after Bobby had passed, you, me, Tony Baker, and Joel Brooks, we just jumped on Diablo. We actually ran through the campaign pretty quickly and then got into some end game content. That was pretty special. So I think it's just picking a game and consistency. So unfortunately, usually what that means is you kind of have to pick one or two people, I think, because it's hard to really get beyond one or two other people, to have them locked down for a night on a Tuesday night every time as you're going to play the same game. I think that's probably the best advice that I can give on this. And just keep, if it's important, you just kind of make time for it is the other final piece, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely with the consistency thing, I 100% agree with it. Again, it's all about scheduling and making sure everyone knows at this time you're playing this game with your friends kind of thing, and because obviously with our new consoles, with the hard drives not being as big, you have to take into consideration what if someone has to install some stuff, whether it's updates or maybe they had to uninstall the game because for X, Y, and Z kind of reasons. So there is that. As someone who's played MMOs for years, with kind of like scheduling raid groups together and stuff like that. I will actually go back to your consistency thing where, you know, like when we were playing Final Fantasy and doing raiding, like pretty hardcore raiding in the game, like we would basically have like every Tuesday, which was the reset day for the game, set aside for like every Tuesday night, we were kind of doing progression for the raid, and we'd set like 2 other days that week after we did the Tuesday thing. But we would all talk about it together and kind of come up with those days at that time. So then we would know every Tuesday we're doing it for sure. And then we just plan 2 other days of the week, kind of working around everyone's schedule. So I think a lot just comes down to communication, finding friends that like the same kind of games as you and making sure you all kind of have the same games. Because that could be another thing. Like if a game's not on Game Pass, like there might be 1 or 2 of your friends, for example, that doesn't have it, and they might feel left out or something like that. Or you might.
Number one tip really is go to the Discord. Yuumi Capri Discord. Link is in the show notes, and there's a whole community of people who are obsessed with Game Pass and Xbox and video games just in general. And I think you'd have no problem finding people who want to get together and play games. I'd love to see more like community game nights and stuff like that. Or we'll do whatever we can on our end to promote that.
So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think I think we've kind of answered this question enough. So let's move on, Sean, real quick before we get into the topic. Did you play anything of note this week with the playlist?
I finished a game, the first game, Ryan, that I've completed, the first set of credits, Lego Star Wars, The Force Awakens. What a cute little game. Speaking of games that I probably could and should be playing with other people, I had a really hard time walking away from it because I actually also played God of War on PC, which I'll talk about in more detail on the PlayStation Drive, maybe at a certain point. But I finished the story and did pretty well in terms of like a first run through completion. And this game, like it's got its hooks in me because I want to just go back and do all the things. I want to unlock all the characters. I'm spending all my little bits or whatever the hell they're called to unlock more characters. And I find all these carbonite pieces that melt and then you got a new special character. And I really enjoyed it, man. That game I played at the right time for me. But I don't know if I can get back to it. We got Rainbow Six that came out today. I want to try that out. And we got like Nobody Saves the World that came out last week. And we got Pokemon coming out pretty soon. But I wanted to just say that I actually completed a game. So good for me. Pat myself on the back.
Nice. Yeah. First credit roll of the year for Sean Capri. I'm so happy for you.
The big deal. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm very happy.
As for me, I played a bunch of stuff on PlayStation that I'll talk about tomorrow. But I did play Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc Anniversary Edition.
What a surprise drop.
We're not going to have time to talk about kind of the Game Pass games of the week, but I did want to give that game a shout out. Because I love the Danganronpa series. It's one of my favorite like kind of niche series, especially like because it's a visual novel, but also like a court simulation game and kind of like a detective game. It's almost like something like Phoenix Wright. So if you've played Phoenix Wright before, you'll feel right at home with this. But it just came to Xbox on Game Pass. So I've played Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc before, which is the first game in the series on literally every console it's been in. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Keep going, guys. Keep going.
So I've played it on every console because it came out on Vita. I played it there. It came out on PlayStation 4 and PC. I played it there, and then it just came to Switch, and I played it there. So I'm fine. I'm playing it for like on like the 4th different console, but I'm excited to just kind of like just randomly shadow dropped the other night on Game Pass, and I'm pretty sure I'd have to kind of look this up again, but I'm fairly certain I've got a lot of world firsts for a lot of the achievements for that game because like no one had review copies or anything like that. And the developers didn't really trigger any achievements. So I think I was one of the first people to actually get some of the achievements in that game. So I'm actually pretty proud of myself. I was actually thinking about doing like an all-nighter when it came out and then kind of like being the first person to finish the game and get those achievements on Xbox. But I decided against it because I had some people coming like at 9 a.m. to repair some stuff in my apartment. So I couldn't really justify doing it.
You don't have to be awake for that. They're doing the work.
Yeah, no, but they were drilling really loud, Sean. I wouldn't be able to sleep through that.
What's the vibe on this game? Is this a horror one? Is this just a weird kind of happy-go-lucky anime thing? Like I can't lock this game down. I don't know.
So it does have anime visual styles to it because it's a bunch of teenagers at this high school for kind of the ultimates. So basically they're the best students in the country at a specific thing. So whether they're the ultimate baseball player or the ultimate fanfic writer or the ultimate author or something like that, like each kid kind of has a designation like that. And they all go to this ultimate high school, but they're essentially kidnapped by a evil teddy bear called Monokuma, who basically tells them that in order to leave, because they can leave at any time, in order to leave, they have to kill another student and
Amazing.
get away with it. So essentially, the students will basically get picked off one at a time throughout the story. And then you have to basically determine by investigating clues and stuff like that, which of the other students did it. Because if they are actually not found guilty, the rest of the students are executed, including you.
Oh my God.
So the only person that gets to leave is the person who did the murdering. So it's
what's the title of this game called again? Danganronpa. What's the subtitle?
Trigger Happy Havoc.
It sounds happy, but not. Man, what? Okay, yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a sick and twisted game, but at the same time, I love Danganronpa. It kind of reminds me of for those of you who've watched something like Squid Game on Netflix. Like Squid Game is almost like a 1-to-1 comparison in a lot of ways to something like Danganronpa, or it's like there's a lot of the same themes in it as well. So if you like stuff like that, then I think you'll really like Danganronpa.
Holy crap!
It's also the game that really got me into visual novels, because visual novels were not something I liked before Danganronpa. I would usually get bored of them, but Danganronpa was the game that really got me into them, and now it's a genre I actually really like a lot. So I encourage people to check it out. Again, it's on Game Pass, so if anything I told you sounds interesting, definitely check it out, download it. I also think they haven't announced it yet, but I'm pretty sure the other two parts, Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair and Danganronpa V3, will come at some point, probably in the next month or two, and they'll probably just be shadow drops on Game Pass whenever that happens too. So we've only got the first one for now, but I suspect the other ones are coming as well. And this also goes to show too that Spike Chunsoft, a company that never really puts their games on Xbox at all. Like I think they found some success with the Somnium Files, which came to Game Pass during Tokyo Game Show last year. And I feel like they're finding some success there. So I think we might see more stuff from them out there, because they're a pretty prolific publisher out in Japan. They just publish a lot of smaller stuff. Like they publish a lot of indie stuff. So there you go.
It's a big deal, man. It's a huge deal for that. And we weren't expecting it. We really want to skip over Game Pass. We don't have a second. They did a big drop with this alongside this, man.
I mean, I don't have it written down, Sean. So if you want to go through it,
I've got it. Well, now that I'm in the safety of my home, Death's Door. I don't even have the date. I'm just going to list off games that are coming in the back half of January here. Death's Door, Hitman Trilogy. I think we know about. Nobody Saves the World. My pick of the month, Paparazzi, which seems like you are a dog taking pictures in Hollywood. Rainbow Six Extraction, reviews came out today, hovering somewhere in the low 70s, I think.
Yeah.
Windjammers 2, and I don't know how to say that one.
Taiko
and then also
no
Rainbow
Tetsujin.
Six. You do it, man. I don't know what that is.
That's actually a really good game. That's actually a drum game, a Japanese drum game. It's actually a really popular arcade series in Japan. And one of the things that's cool about it is they also have a bunch of licensing with a bunch of anime songs and stuff like that too. And in Japan, they specifically sold a peripheral set of drumsticks that you would actually play. And a drum at home basically to play with. But we just never got that released here in North America, unfortunately. But I actually recommend that game too. If you like rhythm games, if you like music games, that game's actually really fun. So
yeah, very cool. Well, I do want to try Rainbow Six Extraction. That was one that previously named Quarantine, and I think they probably were right to change the title of that. Death's Door, everybody's excited about that one. That seems like an absolutely huge get. And not launching into Game Pass, but is available on Game Pass, is The Forgotten City, which in the Discord, the Backtrackers, is a video game book club. Delroy and Marcus O'Neill are getting that whole thing going on Saturday. You still have time to beat it and play and discuss. So check out the Discord for the details on that. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
And also, I don't know if that was listed in there too, but Hitman Trilogy also out this week.
Yeah,
too.
I mentioned it. Yep.
Okay, cool. So there we go.
Yep. And also Hitman Trilogy.
I hate you, Sean. All right. Let's go into our big topic of this week, because I think the rest of the show is going to be dedicated to this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 questions about this topic as well. So
you guys are amazing.
Huge thank you to everyone who wrote in this week with questions about this topic, because Sean, I don't know if you knew this. I mean, you might have, been living under a rock since yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago from the time you're listening to this, but Xbox bought Activision /Blizzard /King for $68 billion. $68 billion. I forgot to do the Dr. Evil thing, because that's a Dr. Evil amount of money, Sean.
almost $69 billion, a very nice purchase amount, which like dollars don't even make any sense anymore, Ryan.
Yeah.
Like what even is $69 billion? That doesn't even make any sense in my mind. But before we get into any of this, the key takeaway, and I want to know your thoughts on this, to me, the biggest takeaway, the obvious takeaway here is that Xbox now controls just an absolutely critical franchise and IP in video games, Pitfall.
Yeah. That's
true. They now own Pitfall, and maybe also you might consider the Mech Warrior.
I mean, they technically also own River Raid now, Sean. So they might actually do a River Raid too.
People are so mad at us right now. It's like, what are you doing?
I mean, after the Atari 2600 version, I mean, it's time for River Raid to come back. But no, seriously,
Ryan. I wanted to give you. This is not in any show notes or anything, but I wanted to give you kudos. Captain Logan reached out to me yesterday evening and said, "Hey, you should listen to last week's episode of the Xbox Drive." And I'm like, oh, did we say something wrong? Like what happened is I thought like we messed up the feed or something. And he said that you had a prediction about Call of Duty on Game Pass in November. You crushed it, man. I feel like you made this happen. I think this is all thanks to Ryan Turford and the energy you put out last week, my friend.
Maybe I actually knew it was a thing, Sean, even though, I mean, it might still be a while before we see Call of Duty on Game Pass. We don't know when it's happening.
Ryan Turford, the fly on the wall, and also man on the moose.
Don't forget the man on the mongoose, Sean.
That's right. That's right.
Because it's mongoose time. Anyways, we
should get into the biggest deal in video games in history. Like, is this as big as it gets? I think it might be.
It might be one of the biggest. I should say it's probably I should say it's definitely the biggest news story I've covered in my time of doing podcasts, and that goes back to 2014. So
what was the previous biggest one? The Bethesda deal? I feel like these are all just monumental.
The Bethesda deal's up there. In fact, actually, probably the Bethesda deal is probably the second biggest one, I would say, behind this. And they're both Xbox.
It's up there with like Nintendo like screwing over PlayStation and then PlayStation starting over like their own thing. Like this is the type of thing that as people were talking about Xbox like buying everybody, they're like, well, they could buy Activision. It's like, the response to that when those kind of things would come up was like, what are you, stupid? Like, do you even know what that would take? You know? And now here they are. Like they just bought them.
We figured out what it would take. $68 billion.
Oh my gosh, man.
And the craziest thing about that too. The craziest thing about that is that it was in cash. Like there's no stock options or anything like that. They could have actually made this, even easier on themselves. But no, they went and did the all cash option. Apparently, this actually emptied out half of Microsoft's cash reserves, essentially, to basically do this deal, which means in theory they could have something else beyond this. As crazy as that sounds, to maybe even do more of a stock option with another company down the road, or if another opportunity comes up, which is just crazy to think about. And yeah, just as you said, as I so rudely interrupted you, Sean, and I apologize for that, is that also, as you mentioned, this means anything's on the table. We already kind of said that with the Bethesda deal, but this kind of emphasizes that even more. Like, anything's on the table at this point, like legitimately. Like there's nothing you could tell me now as to like crazy scenarios that couldn't happen in the same way that this happened. Other than, of course, maybe buying, I would say maybe the crazy things and the kind of the untouchable scenarios would still be like, Microsoft acquires PlayStation or Microsoft acquires Nintendo. I think those are outside the realm of possibility because they're console makers.
For the short term.
Yeah. But for now, I would say like, I don't think there's a third party that's really safe from Microsoft or a lot of the rival companies, which kind of is going to get into one of the first things I wanted to talk about, because I feel like this move, now that I've had a chance to kind of reflect on it, because one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to wait instead of doing like an emergency podcast yesterday when this news broke was so we could get kind of more information about how this came about. I feel like this situation, first of all, it came from what we heard. This actually came together very quickly. Apparently, according to Jeff Grubb and some inside sources, the negotiations for this actually started in October, essentially when the Activision stock was at its lowest after all of the lawsuit stuff and all the Bobby Kotick stuff kind of came to light, essentially, where Activision was really trying to sell the company at that point not necessarily Bobby Kotick, because Bobby Kotick apparently was against the idea of selling Activision, but it was the board of directors kind of like overruled that idea and said, no, we're doing this. We're selling.
Did you hear what Bobby Kotick wanted to do? How he was going to change public perception?
Oh, yeah. You mean how apparently he was going to wanted to buy like a press outlet like Kotaku or
and PC Gamer, like PC Gamer. Dude, like how? And of course that was going to be his solution. Like if you're corrupt enough to do the things that you've done, then that's as corrupt as you're going to be to go try and do something like that. Like it was basically the plot of Tomorrow Never Dies. Like get out of here. Like just go buy the media. Give me a break.
So apparently how this came about was that after Activision decided that they were going to sell the company to, essentially the highest bidder at this point, they actually approached a bunch of different companies. Microsoft was one of them, but they also approached Google, Tencent, and Amazon, also asking if they wanted to purchase them. The only one who actually gave them an offer was Microsoft at $68 billion. And basically Activision, once they got that amount, went to the other companies again to say, hey, Microsoft wants to buy us for this amount. Do you want to match it or exceed it? And none of the other companies apparently wanted to do that. So they said,
it's
okay,
unprecedented.
We're going with Microsoft.
Some of those companies are making big moves, and Tencent maybe probably the most, I would say. Like,
yeah, they're the biggest company in gaming right now. With the most,
which is wild. Like,
revenue.
I think Phil Spencer says something to the effect of like, with this purchase after this, now they're number 3 in gaming revenue after Tencent, which I think was number 1. And then PlayStation's number 2.
Yep.
Even with Call of Duty and all the things that we haven't even outlined, like what they actually own, in addition to Pitfall, they have all this stuff, and they're still number 3 after just like the biggest deal. So kudos to Sony on that. Every time that we talk about one of these deals, like Bethesda and everything, it comes up. It's like, man, it just goes to show how hard this business is, how insane this industry is, because even after a $70 billion acquisition, you just adopt all that revenue that's coming back in. Still not enough. It's still not enough to beat PlayStation in terms of revenue. It's wild, man.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because like NPD came out yesterday as well with like all of the top sellers from last year. And I mean, first of all, the top 2 games were literally Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and then Call of Duty Vanguard were essentially like the top 2 games from last year. But then the rest of the list, for the most part, was Nintendo and Sony games at that point. With Forza Horizon, I think being near the bottom of the list. I think it was like 19th or something. But I mean, nothing else from Xbox specifically. So I mean, when you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. But it's even crazier to think about that PlayStation, for example, is or even now Microsoft are bigger revenue earners than Nintendo is, which is just it's interesting to think about that scenario too, especially because their platform just relies on all first party stuff and they all sell super well. So
and you'll see 2022, I think, a pretty important year for Nintendo as they have a movie coming out, and of course the parks are going to start coming out as well. So them as a brand, I don't know if that revenue account is video game revenue. Maybe that's something else that the numbers we're talking about before might be strictly video games, and Nintendo's going beyond that. So just interesting to see the 3 different companies really doing completely different things. And my take on it really is, especially when you talk about all those suitors, is thank God it was Microsoft.
Yep.
Honestly, it could have been Google, it could have been Stadia, Call of Duty, and all these really important franchises being over there. Good God, help us all.
Or Amazon and just locking all the Luna, like Amazon Luna or something like that. Like that's what the point I was going to get to, kind of why I wanted to explain it, the history of how this came about, because I think it's really important for context for why this acquisition happened. Where again, Phil Spencer's talked about in the past, their main competitor isn't PlayStation. It's these bigger companies like Tencent or Google or Amazon, where essentially Microsoft saw this opportunity there. They thought, Tencent or Google was going to pounce on them. So they went for it instead and made sure to lock it down. And I feel like of all of those companies I kind of listed off, to your point, I think for us gamers, it probably just makes the most sense. I think it's probably the best fit. And I'm so happy to see them in the hands of Microsoft as opposed to, Google or Tencent at this point.
So like this deal doesn't really close until maybe June of 2023. So I wanted to ask you, Ryan, we kind of just said Call of Duty is going to be part of Game Pass maybe sometime after that. Like, when do you start to see this really impacting Xbox gamers? Because it's big news now, but when do we actually start to feel the ramifications of this as Xbox gamers, and then maybe start to see things being quote unquote taken away from other platforms?
So as far as Game Pass, Game Pass stuff, because I think that's the first ramification we're going to see.
Totally.
I think that'll happen as soon as the ink dries. So first of all, the date, like June of next year, that's kind of like a targeted date because this deal is kind of happening so quickly. And so with like, it's such a quick turnaround. It's different from the Bethesda deal where it was kind of 2 years in the making. They kind of already had a date established for when the deal was going to be done. Whereas this, they're just like, it'll be done before the end of the second quarter, essentially, is what they said. So that ends in June, but it could be any time before that is what they're insinuating. So whenever. And
do you think it's like dependent on that for Game Pass things to happen? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Like, we're in uncharted territory in a certain extent here. Like, is there deals that can still be made along the way to go? Like, is there, can you advance
legally
any of this
can't
stuff?
Make any deals while this process is happening. Yeah, because that's one of the things. They're basically the two companies now until like, because they basically signed all the documentation to make the intent for the purchase to happen. Essentially, as part of that, the two companies can't talk to each other about plans or ideas or anything like that. They have to wait until the offer is officially approved before they can make anything happen. So
it's like when a bride and groom, they've got to like spend the night in separate rooms until the night, and then they actually get married. Then they can actually, get in bed together. Same
idea. I'm glad we were on the same page with that one. But
I got it.
But so as a result, unless there was something that they talked about ahead of time,
interesting,
like any deals they had set up before that the offer for buying the company was put in, then unless anything like that was done ahead of time, then no, we won't see anything happen before then. So I would imagine though, the day they announced that this deal is officially final, that's when snap, like a whole bunch of stuff comes to Game Pass that day. With like Call of Duty Vanguard or even just all the Call of Duty games, because I think almost all of them are
backwards compatible. That's what I'm hoping for. Go backwards in time. I think that would be great, man.
Like definitely. Like Spyro, Crash, Tony Hawk.
Oh my gosh,
like all the Diablo games will be on backwards compatibility, like both Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. Like everything that Activision Blizzard has will end up on Game Pass either that day or it'll be like over the course of a month or two, kind of like what happened with Bethesda, where it wasn't all in one day. It was, hey, here's 20 Bethesda games, and then here's another 20 Bethesda games, kind of as we went along.
Can we do an extra mile on like, let's start to rank and start to think about like the games we want to see come to Game Pass first of the Activision lineup? Cause like, the graphic that's going around is it's Call of Duty, it's Diablo, it's World of Warcraft. Like those are the big ones, but like and especially like with your historical kind of knowledge on this kind of thing, I think it'd be really interesting to go, yeah, what about Spyro? What about Tony Hawk? What about some of these things? And I'm sure we're going to get questions about like, who's going to be developing the next franchise and this IP and all these other stuff. So.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into that because there's definitely questions about that. But yeah, like there's a bunch of IPs out there that are not, the popular IPs now, but they were really popular back in the 90s and the 2000s that Activision still owns too. Like No One Lives Forever, for example, is like a franchise that Activision totally owns. And that was a great game series back in the 90s.
If you say so, Ryan.
Exactly. So there's lots of stuff out there. And as far as Bobby Kotick, as far as we know, he's staying on with the company until after the ink dries, and then from there, who knows? But
not
obviously,
long after. No, I think they said like they basically that's it. Like that, that he will stay on until it's done.
Legally say that he's going to leave,
right?
But the Wall Street Journal, for example, has reported that he will leave as soon as it's over. So the impression is he will be done as soon as the contract's over, but it's not set in stone. And they can't, likewise, they can't see that either. Cause again, they can't make any changes to the company. And likewise, it would also affect the stock price of Activision currently if they did that. So obviously they can't do that type of thing now. So again, we'll hear about that later, but also I think it presents a great opportunity, I think, for Activision Blizzard to kind of like turn the ship around as far as the company culture, because as we've already heard from Phil many, many times, that he was disgusted to hear about what happened at Activision Blizzard, and he's not going to let kind of that culture stand in Xbox. I mean, he doesn't let that stand anyways, or at least that's the stance he takes with the current Xbox slate of studios. So I imagine that there's going to be kind of a firm stamp of on the culture at Activision, more so than a lot of the other studios. Because if you remember with when Bethesda joined, they talked over and over again about how Microsoft wasn't going to influence the studios themselves or put too much of themselves into it.
Yeah, they sure didn't say that this time.
Right. This time around, it was just like, I think they're going to take kind of full control of the situation here, especially because in the original announcement, they mentioned that essentially the head of Activision, whoever that will be after Kotick leaves, like they will report directly to Phil Spencer directly as kind of the CEO of the Xbox division, which, by the way, huge congrats to the promotion, Phil, because that was actually one of the announcements that they made as well, was that they kind of changed kind of the structure a little bit of the Microsoft the Xbox hierarchy as far as who's in charge, and Phil is now the Xbox CEO essentially versus what his previous title before, which is interesting as well to see.
I love it, man. It's very exciting. And also a quick shout out and plug and promo to anybody who's a patron at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. At the $3 tier and up, you get exclusive content. And Mr. Badbit from the Trophy Room, him and I last night recorded our full on thoughts. And what I love about it is I think you and I are tackling this from primarily like an Xbox centric perspective, which we should be doing on the Xbox Drive. But Joe and I, Mr. Badbit and I, we really tackled this from an industry standpoint. How does this impact PlayStation? And how does that impact like how the two platforms are going to go forward from here? So it was about an hour chat, and it will hit feeds on Patreon on Friday. So if people want to go check that out, I highly encourage you to get more, because this is a big, like you said, this is the biggest story. There's a lot of different ways that we can tackle this, lots of different opinions. We could spend an hour talking about Bobby Kotick, for God's sake. So we get a little bit more into that with Joe and Mr. Babbitt over on the in the Patreon. So go there, check it out.
Yeah. Also on the PlayStation Drive Tomorrow, we'll be talking about kind of the PlayStation perspective as well, but we're not going to go super deep into it. Not nearly as deep as probably you and Joseph went into as well. So there's another reason to check this out. So kind of the conversation from here, Sean, I, of course, prepped everyone's questions here kind of in a specific order, and we'll talk about them as we go and go from here. So we're going to start with Seamus McIsaac at Famous Seamus, who actually had 3 different questions. So let's start with that. And a couple of these, as we go through them, we might have talked at least a little bit on them or touched on some of them, but that's just the nature of this conversation. So first question is, what are some Activision games you would play if/when they appear on Game Pass that you didn't previously already own? So Sean, is there a Game Pass, like an Activision game on Xbox right now that you currently don't own that you think will come to Game Pass that you'd want to check out?
Can I say Vanguard? I don't own that. I would love to. I'd love to own. I think that's I would definitely, because I like Call of Duty a lot. I don't know if that's like okay to say anymore or not, but I really like it. I missed it. That is one that, especially as it is an annualized franchise, I think we'll have questions about that too. Like an annualized Call of Duty coming into Game Pass is awesome to me. I think that would be great. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I might even just pull up a little web browser here.
Yeah, I mean, also, I would say for me personally, it's probably Diablo 2 Resurrected. It came out last year.
Ooh, I'm with you on that one. Yes.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm not going to buy it because I know it's going to come to Game Pass, right? So at this point, I'm cool with just waiting till it comes to Game Pass and playing it then. But that's another one as well that I think we'll be able to play with friends and have a good time with. But other than that, kind of think of from your perspective is what you haven't played. I don't think you've ever played Crash 4 as well, right, Sean?
I don't want to play Crash 4. I want to play World of Warcraft, though. I think that's one of the more interesting things about this is, what do they do? I think this means you basically get World of Warcraft with Game Pass. Whereas this before, you have to pay a subscription. Like, what do you think you'd have to pay in addition to Game Pass? You have to pay for the regular.
No, if World of Warcraft comes to Game Pass, it will be a situation where the subscription will probably come with it as a Game Pass perk.
I think that's probably the biggest deal to me. Like it's more than just purchasing a game. Like the thing that's really held me off of WoW is that subscription fee, man. Because I won't play it for 1 trillion hours, right? Where you play you play these games and it makes sense because you spend so much time and it doesn't matter. The dollars actually work out. For me, I just want to try it. I want to play along with other people. And that opens the door for me in a big, big way for sure.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a slam dunk move. I think that's going to be one of the things we'll probably be talking about in the next year or so, whenever that happens. But as far as it coming to Xbox, though, because I know that's been a question that people have had, not necessarily in this list. I don't think anyone specifically asked us about it, but I actually don't think World of Warcraft is coming to Xbox in its current state because we talked about this when you did the live stream yesterday, Sean, but there's too many buttons in that game and there's not really a good way to make that game work on console in the way the game is built now. So at some point they're going to have to do like an overhaul to that game or make a WoW 2. And then when they do that, that will be on Xbox. So there you go. Next question from Seamus. Do you think with Microsoft's help, they can put a few of the past Spider-Man games like Ultimate or Shattered Dimensions on Game Pass? We already know that they're not doing any more backwards compatibility, Seamus. So unless those are going to be brand new releases, kind of like what they did with kind of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, I doubt it. I don't think that's going to happen.
I doubt it.
But I would love to see it, just like the James Bond
Yeah.
games that Activision did too. I think those games are great. So
Yeah.
I would love to see those there. Or do you remember the Bourne Identity game that they did as well?
Oh yeah, definitely.
On the
I
360.
played that back to back with Quantum of Solace. Like those two games kind of like pair up with me in my mind.
Perfect. Yeah, because like those are games that I'd love to see come back, but no, I don't think so. Next up, they announced yesterday that Game Pass had passed 25 million subscribers. Do you think putting Activision games on Game Pass will lead to even bigger numbers? I mean, with Call of Duty going to be coming day one to Game Pass, you bet your bottom dollar Game Pass subscriptions are going to go up because of that. Like, even if they're just going to go up when Call of Duty releases and then go back down again, like you better believe people are going to shell out Game Pass money for Call of Duty, I think, rather than buying it.
You know what I think that they get with this Activision deal? Like they get a lot of just business practices and models that I think will be interesting to see if it actually merges into the way that Microsoft even advertises and promotes Game Pass. Like I feel like people who are in the know about video games in general, if you listen to this podcast, you know what Game Pass is, but I'm really curious to know if like anybody else knows what Game Pass is. And I feel like what Call of Duty has done is like they have a game there that is actively transcending this core audience, this hard, I don't want to call it hardcore, but like the main video game dorks like us. Everybody plays Call of Duty. And what Call of Duty does so well is like you play this Call of Duty, you might like Warzone, or you're probably already playing Warzone, you should go buy this thing. Like their cross promotion is baked in. And whether or not people like that, whether they not, people might think that that's kind of like gross and, you know, just they don't want to be advertised within their games. Like regardless, that's a model that seems to work. And I'm really surprised that you don't really see you want to play Halo? Like it's on Game Pass, like that being more prominent. And I'd be curious to see like what they do here now with so many users, so many gamers touching all these Activision properties. Where does Game Pass fit into that? How do they go, you like Call of Duty? The best way to do it is Game Pass. I think they have to do that better.
My marketing side of me actually is thinking that it came up with the idea that the next Call of Duty that comes out after this deal is done, before the Xbox exclusive one comes, in every physical copy of Call of Duty, you put a Game Pass code in there for a Game Pass trial. So that, because that's not something that they could do before, but now that Microsoft owns the IP, that's something they can slap in every box to introduce anyone who buys the game physically that, hey, there's this thing called Game Pass. Have you heard of it? It's over here.
But why
it's
don't they
got
do
all
that
the
with
Call
the
of Duty games
consoles
on there right now?
Why don't they do that with the consoles? Why don't they used to give you 2 weeks of Xbox Live to get you locked in? It seems like such a no-brainer. I don't know if there's some sort of like legality around not giving that away, or I'm not sure.
I think the idea now with that is
that
with consoles, it just tells you about Game Pass if your account is not flagged as having Game Pass. Like through your setup, it's like, hey, by the way, there's this Game Pass thing that exists. Here's all the details about it.
Give everybody a month, get them started. It's like it's the Columbia House model, man. Like,
well,
it's
it already has a
no-brainer.
free trial though, Sean. You have to remember that. It's all like it's not rewarding for any of us who already have Game Pass, if that makes sense.
I feel like that's not baked into like like you open I have a console. I've had both of them. It didn't have anything that had anything for.
Oh no,
Game
I
Pass.
meant in the UI when you're going through the setup. If your account doesn't currently subscribe to Game Pass or hasn't tried Game Pass before, it comes with a big
It's too
Game
easy
Pass
to
slide.
skip. And that's the only. It's so fleeting. Like that's if that's actually the answer, then that sucks. I will say that is a terrible answer, and that's why you don't have a number.
This
greater
isn't
than
me saying
25
that
million.
option's great. It's just me saying that's why I think they moved away from what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it didn't work. That's what I would say. They've got all these people. You got to, and to your point, pack it in with everything. And then the other thing that is attached to this is how many hundreds of millions of people touch esports related to Call of Duty. Like this is really, I think, a big move on that front as well. And where's Game Pass and all of that? So lots of eyes on games that now you're starting. If this move is for Game Pass, I want to see that a little bit more prominent.
All right, next up, Mike at BlazeKnight0923 asks, how does this acquisition help round out Microsoft's portfolio of game offerings? I think that this obviously adds, as we kind of alluded to with all of the weird IPs from Activision, or even just some of the bigger ones. I think it really just rounds out all of the IPs that Microsoft has. And I think it definitely means potential opportunities for current Microsoft studios to maybe try games on that Activision owns right now, like IPs. Like if for example, let's say Playground Games, after they're done Fable, maybe they want to make a new Pitfall game. starring Pitfall Harry, and you go and explore it. It's like Uncharted. I mean, that's a thing that could
taking a drink
exist
to
now.
throw in something like that. I can't even interrupt you with anything like that.
But then from the other side of the coin, it also means a situation can happen where Toys from Bob, who did Spyro and Crash 4, can maybe take a chance at something like Banjo, which I think they'd be perfect at. So I think it goes both ways, and it really rounds out the library, I think, in a lot of interesting ways. But what do you think, Sean?
No, I definitely want to see all these franchises and developers shuffle around. You saw Perfect Dark go from Rare to now the Initiative. Like there's examples of this, and I'd like to see that. To me, it's one level up from that, which is it rounds out the PC offering and Xbox really owning the PC landscape. And then something that none of us really want to talk about, I don't think, is mobile. Like with them getting King, Xbox and Microsoft pretty much have had no presence in a mobile market. And if they're really after billions of people around the planet, then I think King is really the unspoken. I don't know how many people are talking about that, but that's the rounding out is on the platform side of things. In addition to the actual franchises. My first thought was like, it actually doesn't round it out from a genre perspective very much, because it's like now you've got Doom, you've got Halo, you've got Wolfenstein, you've got Call of Duty, all these shooters. Like it amplifies action quite a lot, like with Activision. But yeah, I think platform wise, you get a little bit more representation for sure. Todd, maybe even Todd Auction might be happy about this.
Maybe we'll see.
We'll see.
Next up, Mark the CaNERDian at the CaNERDian asks, are there any sweeping changes you'd make to how Activision games are rolled out, which franchises get attention, or how development teams are used if you owned the company? I'm also going to bring in Court Lalonde as well, at Court Lalonde, who else asks a similar question, who asks, do you think Xbox will change the format of the yearly release for Call of Duty? Do you think we might see a new IP from any of this? So Sean, if you let's say ran Xbox.
Oh, I like that concept.
If you ran Xbox, Sean, what would you do with kind of how Activision develops their games? Would you change anything? How would you do this?
My thought is that I think Xbox has seen something in these conversations. The roadmap for Activision Blizzard King is that there is something coming, that maybe a big change to Call of Duty, or what maybe it's the approach or some sort of new hook to grow that franchise. I think that could be coming, or a brand new franchise as well. I think it has to happen. But I do think in some of the articles I've been reading is that like there haven't been, Activision Blizzard has been struggling in that there haven't been like really obvious growth vectors, I think was the word that Jeff Grubb used in his article. So that could be interesting. What I will say is Activision has done things, especially with Call of Duty, in ways that I understand. Call of Duty works, and it sells a gazillion copies and makes them $1 billion, however many, like tons of money every single year. So why wouldn't you, as from just a money standpoint, why wouldn't you do that? Now, I look over to Ubisoft and think they used to do that with Assassin's Creed, and they veered away from that, and the company still is doing quite well, and actually probably even better than ever. So I think what this move allows them to do is, it's risky to do that. It's risky to say we're taking a year off Call of Duty, but maybe they can withstand that risk a little bit now, because you've got some other game filling in the blank where Call of Duty would sit. Maybe you've got a Gears of War or a Doom or the new Quake.
Well, you've also got Warzone. Like that's not going to go away. Like that, or we've seen it with Call of Duty, Black Ops Cold War. Like look how well that sold this year. Like if they didn't even need to put out Vanguard this year. Like people would have just kept buying Black Ops Cold War this year. So
I think it's just, but what I will say, and why I understand how Activision has done it, is like they continuously get to iterate upon that franchise. And when you look at it like in a 5-year period, it's totally different. What if you didn't get a Call of Duty for 3 years and then they drop Vanguard? Like, and it doesn't really land, doesn't review well. It's hard to make the comparison. It's hard to know if it would have maybe been received a little bit better if we weren't burned out on Call of Duty. I'm not really sure, but it seems to me that it's just like the core of that game wasn't really received all that well. So that's a huge risk. You spend 3 years without a game release and you launch something and it's like people don't like it. That's why they don't do it that way. Right.
But at the same time, yeah, I can understand it from the position of Activision as an independent company having to do that, because they need to, make their investors happy. They need to, keep the lights on. And that's why they did that type of thing. Yeah. But with Microsoft's money and being part of like the bigger Microsoft family, they don't need to do that anymore. So prediction time, Sean, I'm willing to give you my prediction. 2024 rolls around. Yeah. Microsoft announces that there is no Call of Duty in 2025.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you totally reallocate the resource. Maybe it's a Sledgehammer or whoever it is. You just like have them going to do something else. I think that's really interesting. I think you just look over like BioWare for the comparison. They don't have an annualized thing, and they put all their chips into Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, and it's like, dude, can they even survive? Like, if it wasn't for them being backed by EA, BioWare would be gone. They would be completely gone.
Exactly. So, and Activision's the same way. Whereas, like, yeah, we'd seen their financials kind of dip down like over the last few years because Call of Duty has had a bit of a decline. Again, not a huge decline because it's still the best selling game series.
They'll have
around.
Modern Warfare 2 come back and it'll bring it back, man. They've got some secrets.
But the reason I feel that way is because I feel like when Phil Spencer goes to these studios and asks them, hey, what do you want to work on? I feel like one of the 3 Call of Duty studios is going to come back and say, we'd like to do something else besides Call of Duty.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that will change the equation of, do they do a new Call of Duty every year? So I think maybe they have, like, maybe it's Sledgehammer that departs from Call of Duty, and it's just Infinity Ward and Treyarch that work on the series, and you get one two every 3 years essentially. Is probably
maybe this is where we get our Quake. Maybe that's where it comes from. Maybe and untying Vicarious Visions and Toys for Bob, like, because they're in Call of Duty land as well. So get them the hell out of there.
Well, Vicarious Visions is actually working on Blizzard stuff now. So I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Diablo. You're right. You're right.
Because they worked on Diablo 2, and I think they're working on Diablo 4 now.
You're right. Yeah. Welcome back, Rod Ferguson and Mikey Barra, by the way.
They thought they could leave, and they just couldn't leave.
Right back in.
Next up, Max G at MasterMax713 asks, what are the odds that this gets through without government intervention or antitrust suits? I like the hard opinion questions. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I mean, Sean's not a lawyer
You're
either.
not?
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I pretend to be a small town pizza lawyer, Sean, but I'm not actually really a lawyer. So I do, but what I will say is that from a lot of lawyers who look at the League Gaming series, who have tweeted about this and hearing more from them in podcasts, like, for example, like Rich Hogue, for example, has talked about this. I don't think that you actually have any worry probably that there's going to be any type of antitrust lawsuits or anything like that. Like anything really preventing this from going through, I think. Think it's going to go through without issue, because something I've heard lawyers talk about is that it's not a horizontal move as far as the acquisition is concerned. It's a vertical move. So essentially, since Microsoft is considered a console maker first rather than a software maker first, it's different from, like, let's say Square Enix somehow had the money to buy Activision. Like, it's different from a software company buying a software company versus a hardware company buying a software company. Like, it's essentially compared to a toy maker buying the license to a toy. Right. Like, that's kind of the idea that's going on here. So as a result, with Microsoft being a vertical move of a software company, Activision being bought by a hardware manufacturer like Microsoft, apparently that's how they don't see it as I know people are talking about throwing around the monopoly world again, Sean. I know it's officially happening. But that's why it's not really seen as a monopoly, because one, there's still tons of competition out there, regardless of what Microsoft's doing. Plus, I mean, you can even look at it like Tencent's maybe even a bigger monopoly than Microsoft is when it comes to this stuff. But also because of the way the move works, I think that's why this is getting through without an issue.
Makes sense.
What do you think?
Yep. No, I'm with you, man. I think you also there's a precedent perhaps with movies and studios and how many actual studios are there. There's I think it's closer to a monopoly in movie land than it is in video games, but it's getting closer, but this will go through. I don't think that there's any trouble. Yeah, exactly. So Sean, we're running out of time. So real quick, I kind of want to, even though we had more questions left, we've got maybe like 5 minutes left at the most. So I kind of want to save some of these questions for next week. So before we do that though, Sean, I want to go to final thoughts with you. What do you think overall of this move? Do you think it's good for the industry? Do you think it's good for Microsoft? Do you think we're going to be celebrating this for 5 to 10 years? What do you think? I think you have to, when I say, I think it is good for the industry, but I have to say this, that to the point we were talking about earlier, is it could have gone to a worse spot. I think this is inevitable. I think that what is happening, I talk about this with Babbitt on the Patreon exclusive. This is gravity. This is, everything is just happening. You've got $1 trillion company and you've got other companies that are $1 billion. It's like these moons and these comets are just going to crash into these gigantic celestial bodies, which is Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Tencent. This is going to happen. So where it landed, yes, I think that's probably good. And I think once you just have to wrap your head around the inevitability of it, it and go like, okay, well, I guess this is good. But yeah, I think what I'm really excited to see as that amalgamation kind of happens at the top is, where do indies still play? That's where the risks are going to happen. That's where the most interesting stuff is going to happen, I think, is at the indie level. And there's still a place for us to play games at that front as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Especially because, again, that we know from hearing the story about how this came about, like they were going to get sold to someone. Like they wanted to sell the company. It was going to get sold eventually. So it's just, who bought that? Is a different scenario. And yeah, I think that this really kicks off kind of the content wars rather than the console wars, kind of the arms race of all these companies trying to buy up all these other companies. It's like the THQ Nordification of the industry in a lot of ways, where they still own more studios than Microsoft do. They still own like 60 studios or something like that. Which is
they just have to manage it now. They just have to, like, that's the thing. And yeah, if it's good for gamers, it just depends on like how they communicate this and get us excited about the next thing. What Nintendo, I think I would say about Nintendo is like, they're really good at going like, there's one game you care about and you're going to give us all your money about that one next game. And that strategy is working for them. What did we just say? Like, all these games are coming to Game Pass and we're going to get to maybe one on average, like 0.75. It's a different take, man. And that's hard to sustain. I think you could have good games getting missed because of quantity, and even still having a giant portion of it being quality, but maybe just too much. It's a different side of the spectrum. Now we're completely flipped over from Xbox has no games.
Yeah, for sure. So one quick question, one word answer to this one, Sean. Does Call of Duty stay multi-platform after the deal is done? Yes or no?
No. I can't do one word. Warzone, I think a battle royale kind of thing stands and goes multi-platform, but single player campaigns, if they even exist in the future, probably exclusive. Yeah.
100% agree with you. That's my line of thinking as well. That's why I went with one word answer. Anyways, Sean, we got to go. Before we go, Sean plugs you out.
There is way more to discuss on this topic. Definitely we'll save some questions, I would say, for next week as well, and maybe an extra mile at some point. I've had a ton of fun talking to you about it, Ryan Turford. More at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. Follow me on Twitter and on Twitch at Sean Capri, Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Capri's, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Sean Capri, I am Ryan Turford. This has been episode 223 of the Xbox Drive, and we out. Bye.
We really did talk a lot about the Activision thing, and I just am really curious to know if you guys have any comments on it. Please leave comments in the YouTube section below. And Ryan totally cut me off. He thought he would throw me off. He did a little bit. I want your comments. There's a lot of things to talk about with this whole thing, Bob. The Xbox Drive is fueled by patrons at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. And from the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful to the nearly 70 patrons who support us each and every month. With special thanks to our Capremium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the Nintendo Drive. You can support Jonathan Brown at youtube.com/GamingPurpleMonkey. Our platinum producers, Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and all of our gold members, Argo, Benji Kong, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Dr. Doom, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skinny Matt, and Xavier Reyes. If you'd like to support this show, go to patreon.com/Yumi Capri and choose the Patreon tier that works for you.